This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, show number 320. We are your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, joined by two of my illustrious co-hosts as we talk about, finally, Chapter 8 of The Mandalorian, titled Redemption. So, without further ado, let's bring in our guest co-host first. Let's welcome back to the show the co-host of the Star Wars Report, Riley Blanton.
Oh, hi. Hi, how's it going?
It's going great. How about you, man?
Pretty good. Although, let it be known that when our call started, I said, oh, hi, just like that. And that's why you heard Dan giggle a little bit, because he thought I said aloha. It was a whole thing. But I'm doing good, man. Excited to be back on Coffee with Kenobi.
Yes. Well, it's always good to have you. I was just talking to our other co-host today about how you and I we were always friends, but we became really good friends when we went to the Denny's event in Hollywood, hung out at San Diego Comic-Con, and life's been good ever since.
Oh, yeah. No, that was a great time. What a great moment. Clone Wars is about to be back, too. It's crazy.
I know. You were also the first person did the Void Secrets of the Empire.
Oh, yeah. That was a good time. I feel like that doesn't get enough attention. Not enough people know about it. It's pretty amazing.
It's great. It's about as good as it gets. Also, as good as it gets is our CWK newsman, Tom Gross.
Well, hello. It's nice to be as good as it gets, I suppose. And Riley, it's great to be on with you tonight.
Yeah, good to meet you, man.
Absolutely. So glad to be here and to talk Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian, finally, again, we thank everyone for their patience. We did a lot of the Rise of Skywalker stuff, a lot of live events. And we're finally, full disclosure, this is the second time we have reviewed this show. It is probably only the second time in the history of 7 years of Coffee with Kenobi that I forgot to hit the record button. But isn't that fun? Riley, you've done that before.
Been there, man. I've done that in the early years of Star Wars Report. There's at least half a dozen episodes that are just gone. It's sad.
That's great stuff.
But we're back.
So we're going to power through. And I checked 3 times. We are recording this one, so that's good. Let's talk about Redemption. I mean, this is the final chapter in season 1. It is an incredible episode. Let's just start off like we normally do. Tom, give us your letter grade and overall thoughts on the episode.
Ooh, wow. Letter grade. Let me talk about it first, and then I'll try to give it a letter grade. That's always so difficult for me. But anyway, so obviously highly anticipated, to have the wrap up. Episode 7, or chapter 7 rather, left us, kind of on a cliffhanger, just a little bit. And so coming into this one, I was expecting a lot, especially since, Chapter 7, I think I sat on the edge of my seat the entire, how long are these? 40 minutes? Or 35, 40 minutes. And so I had a lot that I was expecting to see, or not expecting to see, but I had high anticipation for a really great episode. And I got exactly that. And without going into too much detail, I thought there were some really fun moments of Chapter 8, if that's possible to say. Some parts that sort of made me giggle a little bit, and then in the very same moment, gasp a little bit. And I'm sure we'll talk about that moment as we go into it. And if not, I will mention it on my own. And then I was really pleased. I felt like there were some really redeeming qualities to some of the characters in this, some characters that I thought were kind of falling flat or did not make much movement as far as progression in this show. But this chapter really did that for me. And then, of course, the huge reveal at the ending of the episode just tossed me the cookie. I've eaten it and I'm waiting for season 2. So I was really thrilled with this episode, and I'm going to give it an A-.
All right. And we also, that is a breaking news. Giggles, Gasps, and Gamma-Rians, Tom Gross's new Star Wars podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Revealed tonight.
Revealed tonight. I love it. Riley, what are your overall thoughts in a letter grade for this one?
Yeah, I think I loved how this episode kind of brought full circle some of the previous characters and plots and things that they'd alluded to, because this is very much, this whole season has been very episodic in nature. Like it really has been an old school serial Flash Gordon kind of deal. There have been some through line, but it's still pretty comfortable with each episode having its own personality. But what I liked about chapter 8 was just how, specifically with IG-88's role and Sacrifice, I liked how that kind of came full circle, and also how we kind of learned, we kind of put those final pieces together about the Mandalorian's backstory, making him a more empathetic character than we'd seen so far. And it took a while to get there, but I actually think that's a good thing. It sort of required some unusual patience on the audience behalf. They really didn't rush it, but I think it all kind of paid off in this last episode. So if I were giving it a grade, I'd probably, I'm going to give it an A, straight A. All
right. I'm going to give it an A as well. An A plus was for the 7th episode. I mean, you can certainly give more than one A plus. I'll reveal why it's not exactly an A plus, but it's pretty darn close. It, as you said, it brings everything full circle. It has all the right emotional beats. There's laughter. There's certainly a lot of tension. And there is a great moment, like you said, Tom, at the end that certainly had people talking a lot. Mm-hmm. So it's great. So let's just jump right into this thing. Starts off with this really cool opening music. And there's really not a lot of tension right off the bat, but actually maybe there is. I want to talk, Riley, right off the bat. And there hasn't been as much discussion about this online as I would have expected. But let's talk about how humor is used at the beginning of this episode. And I'm talking about between the two scout troopers. Did anything jump out to you, or how did you feel about, well, I mean, let's just put it out there, the treatment of the child? And there's quite a bit.
Yeah, it was that immediately jumped out to me because it was kind of out of character. It was pushing the boundaries of what we'd seen as far as humor goes in Star Wars. And also like took a minute. It sort of let the joke breathe, like their little back and forth. It was almost robot chicken like in its nature, to which I saw some criticism of that, but I personally liked it a lot just because it kind of, as a guy who's in the military, it kind of reminds me of a lot of those, like, low level. It just, you just got to follow orders and figure out I don't know what the heck's going on above. It's above my pay grade. So the humor was funny, but it kind of turned quickly too, where man, I've never seen so many people so angry at, what's that one? What's the comedian what's his name? I've blanked on it since then. I saw it on
Jason
Twitter.
Sudeikis. Yeah.
The poor man, I think he issued some kind of public statement to say, I do not endorse the physical abuse of baby Yodas. But it also reminded you that, like, yeah, stormtroopers are bad guys, right?
Yeah.
Not
true.
Nice people. But I think I like the use. I think it was evidence of Taika Waititi as the director, that it was more on the edge as far as humor goes. But I personally love that kind of stuff. not the Baby Yoda punching part. I should be very clear.
Yes. I'm glad that you were, but I knew what you were saying. Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay, so before I even get to the treatment of the child, death was a point of humor because of how they talked about Moff Gideon, how he's talking about how he's motivating or scaring the troops, how he's expressing his frustration. And yes, I did chuckle quite a bit. And then I thought about, well, okay, we're definitely seeing this from the grunt point of view, as you said, Riley. And we're definitely seeing a different side of it. We're also seeing that not everybody in the Empire is full on board and drinking the Imperial Kool-Aid, even, long after the fall of the Empire. But these are just guys looking for a paycheck, most likely. And we see that they're not highly skilled with a blaster, of course, because of the way they're shooting very poorly. for practice. But the treatment of the child, absolutely, I thought was terrible. I thought it was in poor taste. And I want to be really, really clear on this. I know it's a puppet. I know it's not real. But the fact that treatment of a child that is clearly, and even when they didn't know it when they were filming this part, was clearly beloved, has become very much a part of popular culture. But using humor to hit a child, let alone a baby, even if it's not real and it's a puppet, I don't love that. And in fact, I think it's really, really in poor taste. I'm not offended by it because it's not real. But as you said, I just don't think Star Wars has never gone to that particular direction. And I prefer we stay away from that as much as possible. So that was the only thing kind of keeping it away from being an A+ for me. But it did serve a purpose. It did show these are bad guys. These are mean people. And they certainly, when IG-11 shows up, they certainly get their comeuppance. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Tom, you want to address this at all?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify with you. So you think it's poor taste from the production value of it, and that's is that what you're saying?
I guess. I mean, I guess I just don't think. I don't know if it came from Watiti or from the actor or from the script, or whatever the case was. I just think you can convey they're bad without doing that.
I want to know kind of how you read the room, or like what your watching experience was, because for me the humor was coming back and forth when, like, it leads, they're talking back and forth, having their funny lines about the Moff Gideon, and then when he starts poking his hand and he bites his finger, that's funny. And for me, the second that he then reacts and punches the bag containing Baby Yoda, that's when it sort of like the air was sucked out of the room and it broke it for me. But I guess that's how you watch it. Because if I don't know, if you're in a room, people you think that's part of the gag, I could see why that would be disturbing.
Yep. No, and I think it happens 3 or 4 times too.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the interplay was great, and the timing of it was great. But not.
I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that during it's. I guess it's kind of surprising for me in a way, but I know that in our room that we were watching it in, it was definitely sucked the air out of our room, and we were like, "What? You can't punch the child!" But I don't know that it really bothered any of us of the action. I think when we were watching it, we were more focused on these are bad guys, and it just sort of reinforced that. And I think, we've been kind of going around that they are bad guys. We just talked about how Gideon, executes a whole company or several people because he's not getting his way. So I guess I don't know. I guess it didn't bother me all that much, but it definitely story wise had an impact on these. It just reminds you that these guys are, first of all, they're stormtroopers, and so they're bad, but they're more than stormtroopers or scout troopers, I suppose. They're kind of thugs at this point. They're not regimented. And so it's kind of backwards, but, I think my favorite part of the whole thing is when I forget which trooper it was, but the one shooting misses, and he's like, let me show you. Shoots it and then shakes his gun. It's got like the spray can ball rolling around. Yeah. I thought that was great. But this is where we also have, up to this point, conversation between stormtroopers have been limited to outmodeled speeders and things like that. And so here we actually have some conversation between 2 stormtroopers to see that they really are just ordinary people.
No, that's true. That's true. So we can probably move on from that. We get back to the standoff, which was part of the cliffhanger of Chapter 7. And we learn, Tom, the Mandalorian's real name. And we also learn something really important. Mandalorian isn't a race. It is a creed. Talk to me about that notion, and then about learning that his name is Din Djarin.
Yeah, well, the other piece that we learn in there is that Gideon knows everything about everybody that's in there, which is a little scary. I mean, is Moff Gideon, Google? Did he just, check out their backgrounds all the way through? No, he's experienced. He has gone through some of the things that, Din Djarin was there. He was experienced the Night of 1,000 Tears, and Gideon was there, and so was, so was, Oh man, why am I always struggle. Cara Dune, and so that's all really important. And so going back to the reveal of Din Djarin, and I love that it wasn't like when the name is revealed, there wasn't the like pause and the dramatic music and here is his name. It just was sort of in conversation. You really had to be paying attention to catch that his name was mentioned.
With the caption on too, to really like, oh wait, what was it? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it just sort of,
before I pulled up like notes on this episode, if you asked me, so what was his name? Because it's been a few weeks since I've seen it. I would not have remembered.
I agreed.
Yeah.
I still refer to him as the Mandalorian, and I know his name.
Right? And we know his face now too, but that's for later conversation. But so what did you say? Oh, how Mandalorian is it's
a creed.
A creed.
Not a race.
I thought that was really really revealing, because our background of understanding of the Mandalorians, first started with Boba Fett and his armor, and knowing that it's borrowed armor or stolen armor or something, but nonetheless, this is what a Mandalorian looks like. And then we go into the Clone Wars animated series, and we really learn a lot about the planet of Mandalore and the Sabine, and all the, and so I think I've always just sort of been, hey, if you're a Mandalorian, that definitely means that you are from the planet Mandalore and you are a soldier of some type, and you have this loyalty. But here, Din Djarin is not from the planet Mandalore, and how do they refer to him? He's a foundling.
Yep.
And we get flashes of his background through episodes 1 through 7, and we get bits and pieces of that all along. But then we learn that even though he's not Mandalorian and he is a foundling, that it is a creed that you take. It's something that you believe in, and it is a faith of sorts. And so that kind of changed my opinion. Not opinion, but it changed my view of who these Mandalorians are. And so I suppose you can be from Mandalore, or you can take the creed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a culture, it's a code, it's a way of life, it's sort of a samurai kind of a mindset. I thought it was fascinating, and it was almost sort of affirming for me, Riley, because I'd felt, especially throughout this series, this first season, that it was more about a way of life than about who they were as far as where they were born. I thought it was pretty cool. What did you think about that part?
It makes a significant difference from what we see on screen, because to actually see it kind of canonized, this idea of a creed, I think it's a lot of times what we've had in our heads as fans ever since we saw Boba Fett originally, that unique armor. There's got to be a story behind it. And of course, we had the vast history of the expanded universe background that came before. But now seeing it on screen, I think it really does. It allows the Mandalorian culture to become what we kind of always speculated, which is its own order. It's kind of like it's its own similarities to the Jedi Order, really, in some ways. It's anyone, can be a Jedi. Anyone can be Force sensitive, but in the same way, anyone can be a Mandalorian. And I like how that's explored, but never like told. We are left to fill in the blanks ourselves of what exactly does that mean. Like just watching this show, I don't really think we get a good idea of what the Mandalorian creed is. We get good glimpses at Mandalorian culture. They protect each other. They've gone underground and they're hiding. They're banned by the Empire. We get all of those sort of pieces of the story, but this series isn't that story, I guess.
Interesting.
I want to know.
I feel like it's more like it is. I feel like it's just more of a very, very slow burn.
That's true, and I think maybe through some of the flashbacks, we get to see them rescue the young Mandalorian, and I like that you kind of get a sense that there's some good to this. I guess, this culture. But I want to know the story. I want to see the battle where they were fighting against the Empire, or they made unholy alliances with different factions. I want to see the more about the culture. But that's just because I am personally very intrigued by Mandalorian culture. So I think we have a lot in store for us, hopefully in season 2, where we kind of explore a little bit more about some of these other characters. And I guess we also get this episode, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but where we have that further conversation with the armorer. I think that kind of tells us a little bit more too.
I agree. Speaking of telling us a lot more, we get a term, the Night of 1,000 Tears. And then we get this flashback, the most detailed flashback we've ever had. It's hard not to think of the Trail of Tears, where, that was sort of I'm not going to compare something fictional that isn't important to an incredibly important event in American history, which is horrible and horrific. But there is a definite theme there. There's a definite connection to the cruelty of one race or one set of people or creatures or droids in this case, compared to other people who are not out for blood. We flash back to Din Djarin being rescued by Mandalorians. There's this really wild 80s guitar vibe, which actually surprisingly doesn't mock it. I shouldn't say surprising doesn't mock it, but more like it adds to it. It could have made it trivial, but it made it very powerful and very poignant. We see very much fully fleshed out the tragedy of this boy. I mean, this isn't the first time we've seen in Star Wars where a child has lost their parents. I think of Rogue One. I think of A New Hope. I think of a lot of different things. But here, boy, you can see why Din Djarin doesn't like droids. I mean, it's really, really fleshed out here. But also the glory and the majesty of what it means to be a Mandalorian in that incredible jetpack sequence. I couldn't help but think of the original Christopher Reeve Superman for a lot of this stuff. Tom, talk about the flashback and what we learned, really.
Yeah. Something has been on my mind where you were talking about that. When you mentioned the Trail of Tears, there was another night similar to this, something real in our history. You have the Night of 1,000 Tears. There was also the Night of Broken Glass. From the Holocaust in 1938. Yes. That, I don't want to lessen the impact of a real historical event by relating it to fiction. But, when you're talking about culture and, those would be two that you can make similarities between. But the flashback, you were talking about now refresh my memory. Your question was?
No, it's important that you I like that you said that, and it's similar to what I said, but you said it more eloquently. Basically, one of the most important things about fiction is that it allows us as a culture, and we've talked about this many times, to talk about things that are hard to talk about, to talk about real truths through a fictional lens, because it makes it more digestible. You can open more conversation about it and address how the cruelty, that men can inflict upon each other. In this case, it takes on the persona of a droid. But I want to talk about what we learned about Din Djarin and his upbringing in the fact that he's a foundling and why he has this relationship with Mandalorian culture.
Well, I think, when you look at that flashback, and it's interesting that we've been given really small tidbits up to this point, that when we got to this flashback and it was longer than, a 2-second flash, it really helped me as a viewer to pay more attention and really try to suck the marrow out of this, because we've been programmed that we're only going to get little bits and pieces. So as I'm watching this, I'm looking for every little bit that I can, like who are his parents and where is this taking place and who is the enemy in this type of situation. And I was actually quite surprised that the enemy wasn't the Empire, but yet it was a separatist super battle droid, which I found to be very horrifying in this flashback. We watch him in the movies. We watch him in the Clone Wars animated, and I didn't see them to be. I saw them to be powerful. I saw Jedi kind of taking them apart and things like that. But here, it was scary.
Killers. Yeah.
Yeah, it was scary. It almost reminded me of in the new iteration of Battlestar Galactica. It reminded me of those Cylon warriors that they were they were scary.
Oh, good call.
Yeah. And so I guess what I learned from that is that, here he is in a hopeless situation. It also, here's another comparison. It takes me back to Jyn Erso. When the Empire comes to take her parents and her mom is killed and is shot, her dad is taken, she hides, and then here comes Saw Gerrera to rescue her. That's kind of what the Mandalorians do for Din Djarin.
I agree, and as I said, this is a trope. Losing the parents, and out of tragedy becomes a hero is born. I mean, this is a classic archetype going all the way back to ancient Greece, and it's effective. And they managed to put sort of an original spin on it, and they actually managed to give hope, Riley, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it does. And I love the visual language that's shown because there's so much. They really give us a chance to focus on the Mandalorian's experience as a kid. The kind of, if you watch the prequels and you see, dozens of Jedi going against super battle droids, it doesn't seem that intimidating. But to one kid, it's everything. It's absolutely terrifying. And I love how they really gave us a chance to zoom in on the character's experience. Guitar riff and all. The other thing, though, I really, as of course the nerdy Star Wars fan who loves the prequel era and the prequels, like learning about it after the fact. I didn't realize this at the time, but I didn't realize that sequence of events was during the Siege of Mandalore. Which, if we want to get nerdy for a second, the Ahsoka novel timed the Siege of Mandalore at the same time as the Battle of Coruscant. It's right at the end of the Clone Wars, and not only that, we're going to see the Siege of Mandalore in the upcoming season 7. That's right. I'd be really interested to see if there's got to be maybe some opportunity to overlap these two stories.
It'll be the greatest. And I don't think you have to worry about saying it's nerdy to make these references.
Yeah. No, not at all.
We are.
I miss seeing live action super battle droids. It was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah,
for sure.
Cool.
I tell you what, let's go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, speaking of pretty cool, we're going to talk about the second half of this episode and the amazing things that happened with IG-11. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Rise of the Resistance is now open on both coasts, Walt Disney World and Disneyland. So you need to be sure and book some experiences to the East and West Coast. You can experience Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge, and Rise of the Resistance. And I can think of no better way to do that than through MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. Their signature service and expert advice will help clients maximize their vacation time and dollar. Their no-cost, no-obligation quote when you use the service is really wonderful, and they also proactively adjust the booking if the rate goes down. They will help your family enjoy everything Galaxy's Edge and the Disney theme parks and the cruise lines have to offer, help plan every detail, and will share invaluable tips. Be sure to go to our affiliate link, which can be found in the show notes on the front of our webpage or on our social media, and sign up for a free, no-obligation quote. You'll have the best vacation possible and help out Coffee with Kenobi in the process. So be sure to tell them that Dan Z and Coffee with Kenobi sent you. Our Coffee with Kenobi Patreon family continues to grow and flourish, and I want to take this opportunity to thank Jason Hall, Dennis Keithley, Colby Mead, Jessica Berry, Lance Hickerson, Adam Bankhurst, David Nicely, Jeff Ellis, Katie Bjordal, Ross Halliban, Frank Mulder, Alexander Moylan, Aaron Harris, Chris Kavarka, Angela Sauce, Connie Shee, John Sorensen, Hannah, Tyler Pompa, Yancey Evans, Alex Procaccio, Tim Van Swol, Ian Thompson, Simbat Detradarian, Christine Turk, Sean Reed, Kurt McKellen, Dan Ream, Brian Harding, Blake Weaver, Jim Capron, Caroline Maselli, Chris Metz, LJ Souter, Thea Selby, Daz Davies, Christian Dale, Brian McKinney, Jared Cantor, BJ Smith, Eric Struthers, Nick Deco, and Mark Suter. Thanks to all of you, Coffee with Kenobi is able to grow and flourish in ways we never would have thought possible. And you get something out of it as well. For $5 or more a month, you get access to CWK Pour-Over, which is our exclusive weekly podcast not heard anywhere else, hosted by myself, Tom Gross, and Corey Kleber. We talk about Star Wars. We go behind the scenes of what goes on into covering events and producing Coffee with Kenobi and popular culture. We review movies, all kinds of fun stuff, and we have a great time bringing it to you. And for $10 or more a month, you get access to CWK Lens, which gives you a ton of video and photos behind the scenes of what's going on. When I was on Rise of the Resistance, I posted a lot of pictures and images that only you got to see. I didn't put on Instagram or Twitter or anywhere else, only for CWK Patreon contributors. If you have any questions or want to find out more about how to support Coffee with Kenobi, be sure to go to www.patreon.com/coffeewithkenobi and sign up today. Thank you so much.
And now, let's see what's brewing in the Star Wars universe this week.
Oh, wait. This is interesting.
You found something.
I'm about to let everyone in on the secret.
All right, we're going to interrupt our review of The Mandalorian, and Tom is going to switch gears as well. We're going to talk about some Star Wars news. So, buddy, switch your microphones. Is that a thing? Oh, do we switch microphones to do the news?
No, it's hats. I change hats.
Oh, okay. I like
Yes.
it. I picture you
Yes.
wearing like a Sherlock Holmes hat when you do the news. Is that accurate?
Well, that just might have to be a CWK office pick.
I like it. I like it.
Yes, well, we will have to reveal that one day.
I can't wait.
Let me fit my hat right now, and I am ready to do the news. The Star Wars show, famous for delivering Star Wars news, made the news this week as they announced the first, quote, spin-off from the show. The new show, titled This Week in Star Wars, will be hosted by StarWars.com's Kristen Baver and deliver the Star Wars news of the week. This Week in Star Wars will air on Thursdays. So what happens to the Star Wars show then? Well, it'll continue to be hosted by Andy Gutierrez and Anthony Carboni. As reported on the Star Wars show, we will see many other faces from the company hosting several events, field events, and more. The Star Wars show will move to a once-a-month program and will air on the last Wednesday of each month.
Yeah, this is kind of big news. I sort of had a feeling that things were going to migrate a little bit, just based on some conversations I've had over the past few months. But this is bigger than I thought. I mean, congratulations to Kristen Baver, former Coffee with Kenobi blogger, who has since moved on to Lucasfilm and assistant editor, and I've worked with her for a couple of articles, and she's really cool. And now she's hosting the news, which is awesome. So kudos to her. We'll definitely miss seeing Andy and Anthony once a week, but I mean, they'll certainly be around social media and things like that. And this is an exciting thing. We'll miss them for sure, but it's a transition, and I think it'll be okay. I'm happy to see more people in Lucasfilm. I love seeing Pete Vilmer on this one. He's an awesome guy, great friend of the show, and just to me, he's been really cool. You've met him a couple of times at Lucasfilm and at Rancho, but what do you think about all this?
Yeah, no, I love it. I think it gives us, a simpler show on a weekly basis, and I have no doubt Kristen will do a fabulous job. But I do like the sort of the more lengthy format of a once a month Star Wars show with the antics of Andy and Anthony, but it looks like it'll have some more in-depth reporting, give us a deeper look at perhaps at what happens behind the scenes and behind the closed doors at Lucasfilm. I like the idea of the roundtable panel that they introduced, and actually Kristen said she will often be a part of that roundtable. So yeah, I think it's really exciting, and look forward to seeing how this all pans out over the next several months.
Yeah, hear.
So we don't know much about the anticipated Project Luminous, but we do know that, Dan, your friend and friend of Coffee with Kenobi and ABC correspondent Clayton Sandell tweeted this week, quote, "The countdown is on. Star Wars Project Luminous to 2420, hashtag Star Wars, hashtag Project Luminous." Well, this seems to be the most anticipated Star Wars announcement that we've had in a while, because we have no idea what this project includes, other than there are some really creative people involved, like Kevin Scott, Claudia Gray, Charles Soule, Danielle Jose Oder, and Justina Ireland. That is a heavy-hitting collection of Star Wars creative.
Yes, it is. That's a Hall of Fame lineup.
Indeed.
That's really cool. Yeah, and I had a feeling about this date as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool to see it out there in the open. There's some cool things happening. My goodness, there's so much I want to say, but I'm not allowed to say it. What I will say is that February 24th can't come soon enough. Everybody's going to be so excited about this. And I like that it's kind of ominous and exciting. There's not a lot to it. Some of our friends on Coffee with Kenobi's Facebook account were talking about the fact that this reminded them of Shadows of the Empire as far as the hype before they kind of spun off and did some multimedia stuff with that adventure. Of course, this will be canonical, so who knows? Yes. Who knows, indeed. But it's going to be really cool.
I mean, what excitement here for the winter time. 221 Clone Wars, 224 Project Luminous. I mean, Star Wars happens in threes, so
214 Valentine's Day.
Oh yes, that's right. That's right. Hey, and 215 Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, that's right. We're playing D&D on the 15th.
Well, anyway, let's wrap up with some news. There will be a new Star Wars young adult novel that will give us insight into the teenage years of the Resistance pilot Poe Dameron. According to a story on Jedi News, the released synopsis of the novel reads, quote, "It's been a few years since Poe's mother passed away, and Poe and his father, who was a pilot for the rebellion, have had more and more trouble connecting. Not sure what he wants to do with his life, teenage Poe runs away from home to find adventure and figure out what kind of man he is meant to be." The novel will also feature Zori Bliss, who we meet in The Rise of Skywalker on the planet Kijimi. The novel will be written by Alex Segura, who is known for his Peter Fernandez mystery series, and cover art will be by Alice Zhang.
So this is apparently going to address that little line in The Rise of Skywalker that talks about how he used to be a spice runner.
Yes.
And we'll see sort of what that means. I'm already relieved to see that he was much younger than he is in The Force Awakens. So it was a long time ago, and it may not be as nefarious as it sort of is made out to seem in that movie.
Right.
Young adult Star Wars novels are usually really fun. So I think it's cool. I'm not like doing cartwheels over this one just because I'm a little nervous when it comes to Poe, because I've certainly said a few times that I felt like his character took sort of an unusual twist in The Rise of Skywalker. I liked him much more in the first two films and the canonical novels and comics before that. So I don't know. Hopefully we can sort of right the ship with him, but that's just sort of how I look at it.
Of course, I totally agree. I like the kind of cocky pilot, the guy who shows off and does it, and so, yeah, I like that side of him as well. I thought it was an interesting turn of character for him in The Rise of Skywalker. I'm not necessarily on the negative side of it, but it definitely took a different twist for him. And I am always for a young adult novel. Of course, I have space in my young adult library, both my home one as well as my one at work for another young adult Star Wars novel. So I look forward to this one and introducing it to a lot of young readers.
Sure. And I don't think you were saying that I was being negative, no. Yeah, but it's more of a thing of like, I agree that he's like a very cocky pilot, very sort of reckless, but a controlled recklessness. And his cockiness was never like Solo. It was never at the expense of anyone else. It was never to say, "Hey, look at me." It was just more like he was very brazen, and he seemed to really sort of go off the rails a little bit in The Rise of Skywalker. And we need to do some character deep dives on all these characters anyway.
Yeah.
The movie's been out long enough. And we're done with The Mandalorian as of this episode. So I think maybe we just need to really focus and light speed skip over to that pretty soon.
That would be a lot of fun. And I always think that he showed the cockiness that he knew he could get the job done.
Oh, I agree. Well, hey, Tom, thank you so much for the news. Let's take a break. We'll have Drew Taylor on really quickly to talk about the changes to Star Tours, and then you and I will return and talk some more about The Mandalorian. What do you say?
Excellent. I will meet you there.
All right, let's do it. We are back, and we are here with the awesome Drew Taylor. Drew, thanks for coming back to Coffee with Kenobi.
Of course.
So you've been on the new Star Tours that features some scenes and moments from the Rise of Skywalker. As far as planets go, tell me about kind of what happens here. I mean, not necessarily spoilers, but
right.
How was it?
It was great. I loved it. It's interesting because both halves of it are new, which is cool. Because I think when they did the Last Jedi one, it was like just Crate was new, and then it was like I think it was
Crate. Yep.
Yeah, it was like the Last
Batu
Jedi
scene at the end.
Right. So it had the Force Awakens head, and then it had a Crate scene, and then the Batu scene. So this is new all the way through, which was cool. So you first go to the water moon of Endor, whatever that's called. You tell me.
Oh, Kefir.
Okay, there you go. And the water effects are amazing. It's really cool. You go under the water, and there's a surprise there that I want to talk about. And then you get a little hologram transmission from Billy D. Williams, who is clearly sitting down. He could not be bothered to stand for this recording. So just so you know, so that you get his little hologram. And then you go to...
Is it cool? Like, is it?
It's really cool.
Yeah.
I loved it. And then you go to Exegol or whatever.
Exegol.
The scary planet, and you see the lightning and the Star Destroyers and all that. And it's actually really nice because there's a little wraparound scene at the very end, and it almost felt to me like this, like Rise of Skywalker is supposed to be the end of the saga. This is like the end of Star Tours in an interesting way, because you pull in, and Ace, who in Star Tours, the lore, is the pilot you were supposed to have, and you see in the pre-show, who is then accidentally replaced by C-3PO, who winds up being your pilot. He comes out and he's like, well, that's my ship or whatever, and it's sort of like, oh, wow, this is really like closing that story, the Star Tours story, a little bit in a really cool way. So,
wow.
Yeah, I was actually like, oh, that's like really cool and kind of emotional. I mean, I know that this iteration of Star Tours has only been going on since 2011, but I think that them adding the new scenes, adding the variations, like when you hit Jar Jar underwater and when the snow creature shakes you around in the Empire Strikes Back sequence, that it's really become a great part of going to Disneyland and Walt Disney World and wherever you go on Star Tours. So it was kind of a nice ending. I really appreciated that it kind of had that closure in a weird way.
I love that. Now, so you obviously are on the pulse of a lot of this kind of thing.
Yes.
Do you get the sense that at some point Star Tours will be gone, or do you think it'll always? I do.
Well, I think it's sort of redundant. This is what I will say. I think that it's a little bit redundant if you have Galaxy's Edge to still have this ride. But I think that the ride, and especially this iteration of it, emphasizes why it's so much more of a crowd pleaser than Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run.
Mm-hmm.
I think that emotional connection you have with characters like C-3PO and obviously Rex before him.
And the familiar planets. Yeah.
Yeah. And all the planets. Yeah. I mean, and I think that doing stuff in a ride is overrated. I think that when you're a mechanic or engineer or whatever on the Millennium Falcon, you're looking away from the screen. You're not enjoying the experience. And I think that Star Tours has proven itself to be a timeless kind of feat of Walt Disney Imagineering. And I think it will go away soon. I think that the ride vehicles will probably be shipped across the way to DCA and be repurposed as the Iron Man experience from Hong Kong Disneyland as part of the Avengers campus. That's my theory. But yeah, I mean, I think Star Tours is just the best.
I love Star Tours. I remember very much the very first iteration. A friend of mine going to California and riding it, and I just remember thinking, "Oh man, am I ever going to get a chance to ride this thing? This is
right.
Sounds like such an incredible dream thing." And that's interesting what you're talking about with Smuggler's Run and that. I love Smuggler's Run, but it's kind of a hard ride to relax on because you're just unless you're sitting in the very back and you're the engineer. There's a lot going on that you feel like you're responsible for. But on Star Tours, you're reliving the movies in a very fun, sort of backseat driver kind of a way.
Yeah.
Familiar musical cues, planets, characters. sequences, and we love that kind of stuff. I mean, I think that's important.
I think that there was also a miscalculation on the part of Smuggler's Run in terms of you're like stealing something for somebody. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's not something you can really like invest in emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Like Star Tours, you're on a airplane essentially going from planet to planet, and you get hooked into this crazy adventure. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of mostly based on Solo, a movie that nobody really cared about, and you know, it's sort of hard to understand in a way that Star Tours is just cleanly told story, you know, and you get it and you love it and you get off the ride and you want to go on it again. And I don't think anybody's getting off a Millennium Falcon going, yeah, let's get back in line, because it's just kind of, you're right, it's kind of a slog that you have to do stuff on it, you know. I don't know.
The best part about Smuggler's Run for me, and I do enjoy it, but the best part for me is seeing the Falcon, going through the queue and going behind the Falcon the way, I mean, that's unbelievable. And then the first time you walk into, you know, basically the interior, and you get to sit at the Djarik table and just kind of walk through those hallways. That to me is more effective overall than the actual ride itself.
I agree. And I love the Hondo figure.
Even though great.
I think he was the wrong character to put.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Galaxy's Edge is a little bit hampered by the story group of it all. Like by saying like, this is a specific time in Star Wars. It's like, oh, nobody cares.
Apparently it's 6 months after The Last Jedi and 6 months before The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just so pretty specific.
Yeah, it's very specific.
But it's like, nobody cares. They want their picture with Darth Vader.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what Galaxy's Edge looks like in the next 5 years.
Yes, I agree.
And how that affects the development of the Halcyon and the Galactic Star Cruiser, too.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's full light speed ahead on that thing. But,
yeah. I can't wait. Well, man, I always can't wait to have you back on the show.
Of course. It's
very, 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 very fun, of course. And speaking of fun, your podcasts, you have 2 podcasts in particular that are must listens to every week. Let everybody know about those.
Yeah, if you could listen to Light the Fuse, which is the encyclopedic Mission Impossible podcast. We have great guests every week. People like Christopher McQuarrie. I don't know if you listen to the new Paul Hirsch episodes, Dan, but we got some more good nuggets out of him. It's wonderful.
Great. He's a pretty charming guy too.
He's great. We showed up to his house and he goes, "You guys really came back again," and that's the kind of self
deprecating
guy he is. So
yeah, love it.
You know, obviously there's a lot of Star Wars crossover there. We had Scott Chambliss on recently, who did not do Force Awakens, but he did the 2 Star Trek movies, I think, for JJ. But anyway, that's every week. And then I have Fine Tuning with Dan's lovable co-host, Jim Hill, which is also every week. And again, I have to shout out, you know, if you want to pre-order The Art of Onward, which is about the new Pixar film, I wrote that book and it will be out in March, the same week as the movie. So check it out.
I love it. I mean, you got to see the movie, but more importantly, you got to get this book and support the great stuff that Drew is doing. Thanks again so much, buddy, for coming back.
Thanks for having me on.
We are back. Let's talk about Din Djarin and a very, very powerful moment. Tom, you alluded to this earlier. This is the only time in the first season where we get to see the Mandalorian with his helmet off. We have said repeatedly, and I will continue to marvel at the talent of Pedro Pascal as an actor, and this pre-mime work that's going on, and how much he shares and is able to emote empathy through a character that never takes off his helmet ever until this moment. He has a choice. He's been badly wounded in the battle, and keep his helmet on versus medical treatment and his code of honor. He says, "Let me have a warrior's death." And IG-11 says, he said, "What? No." Din Djarin says, "No living thing has ever seen me with my helmet off." And he says, "Well, I'm not alive." And, first you're like, is he going to blast IG-11? It certainly wouldn't be the first time he's done it. But then Riley, we get this beautiful moment. Talk to me about that reveal and what that said about the Mandalorian.
And they did such a good job setting it up, because it would have been one thing just to have his sort of his moment to think he's going to die and then last minute not having to. But it really came down to a level of trust, I think, that he had to have to let IG-88 heal him. And it seems like in an everyday scenario, like, of course you got to remove the helmet and heal your wounds. The droid is capable of doing that. You got to do it. But it really, I think we were just talking about it, but the flashback that shows a primal distrust of droids. If you lived through the Clone Wars and the Separatists, savaged your entire planet, there's a reason you would be droid racist. So it's in that way, it really is a classic story of being able to trust the other, trust the person that you by rights shouldn't. And in that way, it really kind of it didn't come off as too cheesy. It really did seem like a true and sincere moment for the character, which is a testament to both the writing and to Pedro Pascal as an actor, because you haven't had a chance. This is the first time you're seeing his face, and you immediately have to buy this moment, and I think it works.
Oh, it was beautiful, and very well said. It's just the way that it comes across. There's vulnerability there, but he manages to do something kind of interesting, Tom. He's vulnerable, but he's still about as tough as it gets. And I think that's very, very hard to do. I no secret about the fact that I was worried that this show, before I saw 1 second of it, was just going to be about this lone gunman and without any personality and this nauseating masculinity that didn't really have any kind of emotion behind it. But instead we get this wonderful example of what it means to be a man. You care about children. Mm-hmm. You care about a culture. You care about a code. You respect life. You feel pain, but you don't let it destroy you. You fight through it. We also see some pride, though. He's not perfect. Let me have a warrior's death. I mean, that's fine. That's commendable. But it's not practical in a real world setting. Now, Star Wars is not a real world setting. In fact, it's quite far from that. But it does show that what he's like. It shows what he stands for, and also shows that he's not perfect. I think that's incredibly important.
Indeed. And, I'm going to say this, and I make no apologies. I think it's kind of become cliche at this point, but I'm going to say it anyway, because when it comes to Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, this is the way. This is who he has become, and he's been built and created all through this. And he's the kind of person that, he follows the creed. He says, this is the way. He follows it to a T. And he says, let me die a warrior's death, because I'm not taking the helmet off. This is the way that I have been brought up. This is the way that I believe. And I think that is a wonderful moment when IG-11 says, well, I'm not a living thing. And what is so fascinating, in reflection of kind of the whole series at this point, what I think is so fascinating about this is we know the Mandalorian's distaste for droids. We understand that, as Riley, you had mentioned, his flashbacks and his experience as a child with separatist droids. But it's been built up so beautifully that IG-11 is definitely a killer. Wasn't it episode 1 that we see how devastating he can be? And then again in episode 7, how devastating this droid can potentially be. But what I love about it is Nick Nolte's character, Quill, who acts as sort of a mentor to the Mandalorian at a few different points, has transformed this droid into, a killing machine to what else but a nurse droid. Right. How crazy and interesting, but wonderful is that here as we sit watching episode 8 or chapter 8 and seeing, as you mentioned, Riley, the trust, and that I wouldn't believe that trust at all had it not been for everything that had built up through Quill's character, through the background of the Mandalorian, through even the care of the child by the droid itself. So it was, as you mentioned, it was a great moment when the helmet comes off, the back to spray goes on, and we feel the hope of there's more to go. There's more to come.
When you saw back to spray, were you thinking, where has this stuff been the entire series, the entire Star Wars mythology?
I haven't missed it since Knights of the Old Republic. It was really handy back then. But I saw some criticism of the convenience of back to spray, but listen, I love the convenience of back to spray. I've been using back to spray in Star Wars video games for forever.
So I actually am not as familiar with that aspect of the Star Wars mythology. Do they use back to spray?
Oh yeah. Republic Commando, the Old Republic Commando game a lot. Yeah, and then I think it was Knights of the Old Republic. And then, of course, you have back to droids conveniently placed around in the old Battlefront too.
Oh, that's
Good
true.
Time.
Yeah. I guess I took it as a viewer. I took it as progress. We used to have these big tanks that you had to soak yourself in to heal, and now we've got the spray. Now the video game kind of throws that notion out, but we also I also look at that as, I'm sorry.
Oh no, sorry, I was talking over that. But it's kind of like a carbon freezing technology. It's gotten much more convenient and miniaturized.
Yeah,
exactly. I was going to mention that as the next one. We have to do this whole this whole giant scene in Empire Strikes Back just to freeze someone in that, and now you just do it in your back of your ship. But
back in my day, we did this on Cloud City. That's right.
Yeah, progress.
I want to take a quick break to say, after I watched that sequence, and then later, of course, what happens at the end of the episode with IG-11, I think the title Redemption is not what people think it initially is. Do you guys have a theory about what redemption is actually referring to? Riley, you want to take a shot at that?
This is my corner. This is my thing. And I honestly hadn't put a lot of thought into the episode title itself. In some way, my first glance, I kind of thought of it as IG-11's story and his sacrifice at the end. But in some ways, that doesn't work as well because, it's a reprogramming. It's not as poetic as a character journey. But I say that, and at the same time, Quill's point in a previous episode was that droids, it's not just about reprogramming, it's about experience that they learn. Kind of like the droids have their own consciousness, which we've known ever since we saw 3PO and R2. So maybe there is a little bit of that element where IG-11's story fits into that redemption arc, albeit in a maybe more unique way.
I like that. Tom, what do you think?
I have to be honest. I had not considered this whatsoever, but I will say, I guess my thought originally, I suppose, would be that there's some sort of redemption in, he's a bounty hunter, and so this whole thing is sort of revolved around this bounty that he was given on the very first chapter. And so I guess, I don't know, I'm kind of talking in a circle here, but somehow it comes back to taking care of the child. And so all of this journey comes back to that somehow. I don't know. That's weak because I just really haven't thought much about it.
No, it's good. That's good. To me, redemption is Din Djarin's opinion of droids. It's the redemption of a philosophy, of a way of life, of a prejudice that has heavily existed for reasons that people can understand, because these droids murdered his family in front of him and took him from his place of comfort. Fortunately, in a very short order, the Mandalorian saved him, but this redemption is more about his point of view. And it's so poignant in this particular moment that IG-11 saves Din Djarin's life, but he also does it in such a way that the Mandalorian is at risk of getting rid of everything that he believes, but because, again, he's not alive, it's not a factor. He lets himself vulnerable to a droid. That's redemption. Dying to an old way of living and coming back with a different point of view. It's a metanoia, and it's really quite lovely. Queel's quote from Chapter 7 is basically, droids aren't good or bad. They're a reflection of the owner, right? Now Queel is a reflection of, or IG-11 is a reflection of Queel, who, of course, is very much an unofficial mentor to Din Djarin. So it's really quite lovely. Another thing that's really great, tying in the mythology, is when he goes back to the armorer again and learns about, there's these evil sorcerers. They're called Jedi. And you've got this new quest. You are as its father. You are the father of this thing. So much so that you've got the claw of 2 as your signet. I think that's really symbolic, Tom. We knew, I think, that once he finally got his signet, that it was going to be reflected in the child in some way. But I just really like that the whole things with the Jedi, these things are enemy sorcerers, but really aren't they? And I found myself wondering when they talked about the Jedi, were they talking about the original Mandalorian Jedi that created the Darksaber that we learned about from Star Wars Rebels? Or was this maybe a shout out to a Jedi that we already know really, really well? Or what do you think? I mean, there's a lot to digest in that little part.
Yeah, there was a lot in there. And I thought, first of all, as a fan of the story, I really loved the terminology they used to describe the Jedi as old sorcerers or an order of sorcerers, which reminds me of Luke's uncle referring to Obi-Wan Kenobi as an old wizard. I don't know. That just seemed like a toss back. And it also, we talk about this quite a bit, and that is that the galaxy is a big place. And as Star Wars fans, we see such a narrow sliver of the galaxy, except for here where, we're used to Jedi. We saw them in the prequels. We see Luke and we see Obi-Wan Kenobi and we see Rey and et cetera. But that's the small sliver that we get to see. What about the vastness of the galaxy that has never seen a Jedi, has never seen a lightsaber? And so I feel like, I feel like there's the part of that conversation where they are just a rumor, and they are. And so on the Mandalorian side, is it a reference to someone who is created? I would guess that it was a reference to someone to the Jedi that created the Darksaber, because that's what they would know. But in this conversation, I think it's more legendary than it is true knowledge. And so there's that aspect. And then the part that I found really interesting about this whole conversation that sort of made me sort of sit back and go and scratch my head and go, whoa, this is something I hadn't really thought of. He is told that he needs to reunite it with its own kind, deliver it to the race of enemy sorcerers. What? Okay. So we know of 2 of this kind. Well, I suppose now that we have the child, we know 3 of this kind. We've got Yoda, Yaddle, and the child. Am I correct in saying that?
You are correct. Yeah.
And so there are more. And if the 3 that we know are apparently strong in the Force, does this mean, I don't want to speculate, but what does that mean? I guess then is the question I'll leave it with. Then the last thing I want to say is that you had talked about the Ern signet, and she burns the signet into the shoulder plate of the Beskar of his uniform, which is where it belongs per creed. And she says, "You are a clan of 2."
Yep.
I'm not sure that is it as simple as I'm thinking? She's referring to himself as well as, or not himself, but to the Mandalorian as well as the child? Or is there more to that I'm missing?
Oh, I'm sure that season 2 will reveal that, but it seems, at least on first blush, that it's the child in Din Djarin. That's that's his clan. That's who his job is to protect. You're like its father until you reunite it with its own kind. Okay.
That's what I assumed, but I was like, maybe there's more to this than what I'm seeing.
I think Yeah, I think it's Daddy Mando. This is my fiance when we were watching it. That was the moment she was immediately like, "Oh, he's a dad now."
That's right.
Which is on the surface level more because it's cute, but I actually think it works. It is kind of a poetic. He's charged with the care, and that's what he's been doing anyway. It's just a sort of sanctifying his new responsibility.
Well, there's nothing more masculine than being a good dad. You know what I mean? A nurturing dad that will help raise your child to be resilient, to be capable, to be confident, and to be safe. And you feel like that's what we're going to get. We also, by the way, Riley, get this awesome little 80s movie moment. Oh, are you training the Rise in Phoenix? Here's a jetpack. Boom. Love that.
Yeah, new class of weapon unlocked.
That's right.
Yeah, I loved it.
Do you remember when you first got your Rising Phoenix training in the military as well?
Sure. They give us all jetpacks after basic training. Great. I wish.
Let's talk about the end of this.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the lava river. I mean, Greek mythology, you got the river Styx. You got this ancient boat with this beautiful astromech, Riley, that also is bipedal, as far and almost not human, but human characteristics. It's just fantastic. It just talk
kind
about
of creepy though, isn't it?
Well, it is
an R2 unit that's like also humanoid.
Yeah, things are not as they seem, and your perception is warped, which is a great mirror, sort of a funhouse mirror to IG-11 and his sacrifice. I love that part. I think it's also important because in this moment, Riley, we see true compassion. Talk about redemption for a way of thinking. He doesn't want IG-11 to die, but IG-11 says one of the most important things that anyone can relate to. I will have served my purpose. Riley, talk about that.
Yeah, and his new purpose, and it's him full embracing what the Mandalorian saw just moments ago. It's him embracing his new full purpose, which is to protect. And it's the visual of it is, I think, the beauty of this moment, because we've seen sacrificial moments in Star Wars. I mean, it's just part of the Joseph Campbell mythology. Obi-Wan sacrifice at the end, from the original film all the way up to now, and to see IG-88's or IG-11's Freudian slip, IG-11's sacrifice, literally walking through fire, right? Walking down a river of fire, which is very, very Greek mythology. I'm no expert, but I know like the idea of traversing a flaming river it's just like I think it's something like that. But it's
an epic archetype.
Very mythological. Yeah, it is, and I loved the way that it just sort of gave that visual language to his sacrifice, and of course they alluded to it so well with his direct capability. He finally gets his chance. And I don't know. I just loved that. But you don't even get a chance to breathe before like Moff Gideon's on him. It's like this episode's pretty fast paced, and not all are guilty of that. There have been some pretty like plodding moments throughout the series. It definitely is breathing room compared to a lot of Star Wars. Yeah, especially the Rise of Skywalker. But in that way, I like how this episode just sort of, it doesn't really slow down.
No, it doesn't.
I didn't quite see it that way in this moment, and this is something I intended to watch this section of chapter 8 again before our conversation, and it just didn't happen. And I thought this was like a screeching halt to the chapter when they got onto that boat and the droid, and I totally agree with the astromech. That was weird and creepy, and I thought was very symbolic of sort of the place where this galaxy, at least where they are, is. It's kind of pieced together, and fallen apart and recycled and all of this. And so that made a lot of sense to me. But I have to be honest with you, the episode was about 40 minutes long. I thought they were on that boat for 40 minutes. Now, I know in other conversations I've had.
So how do you really feel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be
no, it's blunt, good. But it's good.
But so in other conversations that we've had about this chapter, the reason I want to go back is I don't have a recollection of the significance of the conversation, which Dan, you've shared with me how important you think this conversation is. I just thought in the viewing of it that it really was slow. And all I just wanted IG-11 to get out of the boat, walk, and explode. I mean, I was ready for it. He wanted to self-destruct so many times earlier, but that we found in like comical situations, but this was serious. And so I knew it was going to happen. And I need to replay that conversation that they all have on the boat, because you have me convinced that it's important, but I don't have that with me. But I thought the episode really slowed down. But Riley, you're right. Once that incident happens, then the end of the episode just flies by, because you have Gideon coming in, you have the flight with the jetpack, and then the major reveal at the end.
So this part, the reason besides I will have served my purpose, I mean, the entire first chapter is about everybody in this episode trying to find their purpose. The child is trying to find, its tribe. Din Djarin is trying to discover empathy and, his purpose, and then it becomes to be like a father. Cara Dune is trying to find basically purpose after being a rebel shock trooper. Mm-hmm. And Greef Karga obviously is doing very well at what his job is, but now he finds kind of people and a little bit of more to him than money. Han Solo, I knew there was more to you than money. Greef Karga is trying to find. They're all trying to find their purpose. IG-11 gets to fulfill his, and I want to take that astromech that is basically the ferry boat driver on the river Styx. That is one way to look at a droid. That's how Din Djarin has looked at droids his entire life since he was taken, or rescued more rather. And then IG-11 is where he is now. And it takes a baptism by fire, not water, but fire, to cleanse him of this old way of thinking. And I think it's really beautiful. So
I knew you would change my mind on that. I'm serious. I need to go back, because I think I will probably change my grade after I see that again. I mean, that River Styx is why I take it from an A+ to an A-. But
interesting. But now you'll cry tears of fire, but they're tears of joy.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'll grant you this, though. I think there's I scrolled back, pulled up Disney Plus like you do while we're talking, and there is a lot of, and Mandalorian has been guilty of this, but I've kind of gotten used to it with Star Wars, because Clone Wars was guilty of this, Rebels was guilty of this, but there some extraneous dialogue in that, and this is a purely technical critique, that where IG-88 goes on for there's a whole minute or two back and forth about, I still have my manufacturer. Well, oh no, there's the troopers. We can't get past the troopers. There's too many troopers. What are we going to do? Are we going to fight them? No, we can't fight them. There's too many of them. I have my manufacturer's protocol. I can go. They kind of really walk you through the whole thing, which for younger viewers, I think helps. I think it maybe felt a little more out of place where Mandalorian swings a little older. But it's a tough writing challenge. I'm no writing professional. It's tough to be able to convey what you want to convey to the audience, but also let them come to their own conclusions too.
It is.
So I think both are true. I think the poetry of the moment, the meaning of the moment, the visual of the moment is there, but I think sometimes, and Mandalorian did this a few times, where they kind of maybe over-explain sometimes.
Interesting. Yeah, so fun. 3 different outlooks, but all very valid. I love it. So let's talk about the end and the epic battle on the TIE fighter, or around the TIE fighter, or floating above the surface of the planet on the TIE fighter. Yeah, Riley, talk about that.
It's I mean, I was waiting and waiting for it. Giancarlo Esposito, I think is how you pronounce it. That's the actor who plays Moff Gideon. I love that actor. I love his flair for drama and the idea of him being a pilot. I was like, of course he's a pilot. It makes perfect sense. I work with pilots every day. He fits the stereotype. And so, but like he works as a classic Star Wars villain. He has the snarling evil grin, the pride, and this history. But this is probably maybe short of IG-11 invading the village and hitting all the stormtroopers. This might be my favorite moment in the whole action sequence, at least. And I love the little details of how the Mandalorian is using his jetpack for like the first time. So he's not really confident. He's just like, I'll just try one vertical jump. We'll see if we can make this work. But it's just a great action sequence. And
the effects are magnificent too.
Oh yeah. It is. There are some effects like just looking back on the Lava River somewhere, they're maybe not quite up to par with what a live action film would be, but man, this TIE fighter sequence, it looks like it's coming right off of the big screen.
It's great. And then of course that's epic, but Tom, then we get quite a little surprise at the end, don't we?
Oh man, I knew, I just had a feeling. I mean, who wouldn't that he was going to survive? I mean, we knew it crashed. The hero wins the day, but you just had a feeling. And then they flashed to the TIE fighter, the wreckage, of course, surrounded by Jawas, which I thought was lovely and humorous and real to me. I mean, that's what they do. And then they hear something, and boom, out comes this, I don't know. I mean, I know what it is, but when you're first watching it, you're kind of in disbelief and you think he's got some sort of odd, cutter inside of his TIE fighter. And then you realize you've seen that before. And the goosebumps come up on the arms when you're like in disbelief and you're just so excited. And you're like, what? And then like all the pieces, like Night of a Thousand Tears, the Mandalorian, the Siege of Mandalore, the Conquering. Holy cow, this guy has the black saber. And so, I mean, when you take that he's a dangerous man to start with, he has this weapon that he brings into the courtyard and he says, I was there. I'm going to destroy you all with this thing. And I'll give you 5 minutes to figure it out, or however long he gives till sundown. And so he's a big threat there. And as you said, he's classic Star Wars villain. And then we have the stormtroopers that set the whole thing up at the beginning saying he's killed so many people just because they sniffed wrong or something like that. But then now to learn he's got the Mandalorian lightsaber.
Yeah, the dark saber. And then you worry about, gosh, the previous owner and what happened to her. I mean, it's scary a little bit.
Because the last place we saw it was when Sabine passes it to now I went blank. In Rebels,
Bo-Katan.
Yes, Sabine passes it to Bo-Katan. So it's like, what's happened to Bo-Katan?
Yep.
I know. If only Katie Sackhoff had made like a thinly veiled reference to maybe being cast in something exciting.
Oh, did she really?
Yeah, she did. She put it was something on her Instagram where she just referenced Star Wars. I'll see if I can find it. But yeah, I was like pretty high. Can you imagine?
Don't tease me. Yeah. And we already mentioned Battlestar Galactica earlier. One of the best shows of the past 20 years. The only other thing I want to say about this before we give our final thoughts is, and actually this will be my final thought. But then when they have kind of their, all right, well, Cara Dune's going to stay here with Greef Karga. Din Djarin's going to leave with the child. We have this great line where Greef Karga says, take care of this little one, or maybe it will take care of you. I absolutely love that. The child has functioned obviously to charm all of the zeitgeist of popular culture that is consuming Disney Plus, but it's also helped to humanize the Mandalorian and get him back to a place of empathy, a place of inner peace, and to give him a purpose. I mean, collecting bounties is great. He's obviously very successful at it, but this is your why. This is your purpose, and I think it's really, really nice. It's a great a great finale. I think it's beautifully done. It ties up a lot of threads from not only this episode but the entire season, while still leaving us wanting more. It can absolutely be done in storytelling, and it's done very well in this episode. I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy with the season. I'm very happy to share my reflections with the two of you and all of our listeners. So thank you both so much. Riley, before we sign off, any last minute thoughts on the episode?
Yes. No, I definitely wanted to mention last minute thoughts on the episode. In November, Katie Sackhoff tweeted, I'm still stuck on this. She just, quote, did the coolest thing ever. And it was right as they were starting filming the second season of Mandalorian, or they're in the middle of it. So that's where the speculations come from, because there's only so many projects she's working on. And so that timing kind of gave it away. And then someone tweeted at her, is it Bo-Katan? And she tweeted back, said, I can't say NDA, which is like, way to tease it. Anyway, I'm excited. I love the episode. I love the Mandalorian. I didn't immediately fall in love with it. Like, if I'm honest, I liked it a lot, but it really did take some time to really sympathize with and get behind some of the characters. There wasn't an immediate likability, but I'll fully count myself in that crowd of, it's probably like 1920. It's been so long now when the Clone Wars movie came out, and I found Ahsoka kind of obnoxious and really didn't like her. But the character arc made me completely fall in love with her as a character, and now I can't wait to see the next season of the Clone Wars. Mostly her story, to see where the story goes.
I agree.
And so in that same way, I think my patience paid off, where the Mandalorian really did take the time to get to know a lot of the characters. Maybe some of them fell a little more flat, but as far as the ones that by the end really did come around for me, obviously the Mandalorian, Quill's role, I think was really impactful. I loved his sort of full circle story there. And then Cara Dune, just as a character, I just want to know more about her. Those are the ones that really to me jumped out the most. Well, that and everybody in that episode, I think it was the 5th or 6th episode with the heist, that I want to know more about all of those. All of those characters were fascinating to me. So from a character perspective, that's the part that I really became most interested, and that's what I kind of am most curious about in season 2. Looking ahead, seeing where that story leads, and bringing a little bit more of the Star Wars mythology. I'm really hoping in season 2 we get to learn a little bit more about Mandalorian culture, where the different clans are, what they're up to, how they're interacting with the remnants of the Empire. I'm really interested to see some of those geopolitical and those remaining warfare being conducted throughout the galaxy in the post-Empire era. I really do want to see some of that too. So those are kind of what I'm looking forward to next for the next season.
I love it. I wanted one quick thing before you give your last thoughts. When I saw the Darksaber, I thought, oh, is that a Darksaber? Oh, so they went there. They're doing that. All right, cool. It threw me at first because I'd never seen one in live action before. Yeah. But I did think it's cool that they are tying all these things in. I mean, when you've got Dave, who's kind of the unofficial keeper of the Legends line, as far as disseminating key elements from it throughout our Star Wars, it's pretty cool. The highlight for me is IG-11 and his sacrifice, and just seeing the humanization of the Mandalorian himself. But you can't go wrong when you throw the Darksaber in. Tom, any last minute thoughts on this one?
Sure. A couple things. First of all, Riley, I'll say ditto on all the stuff you're looking forward to. You said exactly what I was feeling. I can't wait to learn more about these characters, especially the ones you'd mentioned. Probably my top one there would be Cara Dune. She just, I want to know where she was, what she's done, what she's seen, who she's worked with, the kind of awesome stuff that she probably did for the rebellion. I don't know that we'll go that far, but certainly I want more of her character. So that's number one. Number two, after this conversation we've had tonight, I can't wait to go back and rewatch the whole season again. And I want to watch it through the lens of and this is going to sound stupid. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be really good. I want to watch it through the lens of The Mandalorian as a father. And Dan, you said that last line. What was the last line again? Take care of
this little one, or maybe it will take care of you.
And as a father, that resonates so heavily with me, because I can't even begin to tell you how many times my children in some way have saved me. And I don't mean literally save me from death, but have saved me, saved my soul, saved my heart, saved so many things. And I just, I want to go back and see that all again. And I think about the moment, the real moment for me is when he actually turns the child over to the Imperials for the bounty, and he gets on his ship and he starts flying away. And I looked at my daughter, and she looked at me, and I swear she had a tear in her eye. She would deny it to this day, but she had a tear in her eye. And I thought, no, this can't be. And then when he just does that, and Dan, you said earlier in this episode, Pedro Pascal acting with a mask on, how he communicated this, it was just with the tip of his helmet. He turns around, and I was like, oh yeah, he's going to go back. And he does, and he gets the child. And I'm like, that's exactly what a dad would do. Because how many times I've thought selfishly, I'm going to go do something that I want to do. And I start walking away, and I turn back around, and I go back, and I'm like, I got to do this for my kids. I got to coach their soccer team. I need to do this. I need to take them to that extra practice. I need to go see them. Whatever it is, help them with the homework. That also resonated with me. So I want to go back and see all of that. My last comment about this show is that it's given me exactly what I wanted to see that was set up in Chuck Wendig's Aftermath series. I wanted to see a post-Imperial a galaxy. And I wanted to see what it would look like. And this is pretty much exactly what I thought it would look like. And so hats off to everybody who worked on this for that aspect, that it really it gave me a live action, painted the picture for me that was in my head from the Aftermath series.
Oh, that's cool. What a cool way to look at that. I love it. Riley, thanks again so much for coming back on Coffee with Kenobi. Please let everybody know where they can find you and your great work on the Star Wars Report.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate you having me on, man, as always. Love coming on Coffee with Kenobi. And find everything we do over at StarWarsReport.com, and you can just look for the Star Wars Report podcast anywhere where you get podcasts.
And Tom, let everybody know where they can find you.
Well, you can catch me right here on Coffee with Kenobi doing the news, or on Twitter at Draftline, DRAFTLINE, or drop me a line, TomG at coffeewithkenobi.com.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are the podcast you're looking for. This is.
As we close out the show, I want to thank our CWK sponsors, MEI and Mousefan Travel, and One Nation Coffee. Please support them the way they support our podcast. And remember to listen to new and archived shows of Coffee with Kenobi wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, YouTube, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, CastBox, Deezer, and our website, www.coffeewithkenobi.com, or wherever you enjoy listening to your favorite shows. And if you listen to the show through iTunes, please leave us a review. You can also find us on social media. In fact, please follow us on Twitter and Instagram, give us a like on Facebook, and check us out on Pinterest. In addition to the places I just mentioned for Coffee with Kenobi, you can find me twice a month on the podcast Looking at Lucasfilm, part of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, as well as on Twitter at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR. You can find my writings on CWK's website, as well as StarWars.com and IGN, where I contribute articles on Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. Don't forget to check out www.patreon.com/Coffee with Kenobi to support our podcast and help us keep the lights on here in the Coffee with Kenobi studios. Our Patreon page is where you can listen to our exclusive weekly podcast, CWK Pour-Over, hosted by me, CWK newsman Tom Gross, and Coffee with Kenobi co-founder Corey Clubb for just $5 a month. There are also options for behind-the-scenes videos, photos, t-shirts, and more. Plus, 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital each month. Thank you to all of you who are currently supporting us on Patreon, and thank you for considering becoming a member of our Coffee with Kenobi Patreon family. And if you are considering starting a podcast or blog, Let me know how I can help you get started and help you make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out my all-new venture, danzmedia.com, and we can get the process started. I am also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization, talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. While we're finally finished with The Mandalorian, it's been great fun to explore this incredible series with each and every one of you. Thank you so much to Tom Gross, Riley Blanton, and Drew Taylor for being on the show this week, talking about The Mandalorian, catching us up on Star Tours, and of course Tom's news segment, which we always love and appreciate, Project Luminous. So many great things happening in the world of Star Wars. You thought 2020 was going to be a little bit slower for Star Wars, but it is not, and we're going to be with you every single step of the way. Thank you again, everybody. Next week, we're going to get back to a bit more of a regular style of shows. I think we need to talk a lot more about the Rise of Skywalker, and who knows what's going to come up in this amazing world of the Star Wars mythology that we are celebrating with each and every one of you. So thank you again, everybody, for listening to Coffee with Kenobi. Until next time, this is a podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.